Okay, so get ready for this one, folks, because today we're going deep into something pretty wild.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You guys sent in this source, and it's not like a normal article or book or anything like that.
What is it?
Well, it's a recording of a hypnotherapy session.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in Polish, so we had to have it translated. And get this, the topic is,
Let me guess. Aliens.
haha, no, but close. It's about whether or not we're all living in a simulation.
Okay, that's definitely a new one for us. I mean, the simulation theory has been around for a while.
Right.
But having a hypnotherapy session as a source is definitely intriguing.
Yeah, I know. So let's dive in and see what this hypnotist has to say.
Sounds good to me.
So right off the bat, the hypnotist starts talking about this idea that our reality is like a carefully constructed game.
Interesting.
And we're all players,
Okay.
but we're not even aware that we're playing.
So it's like we're all sitting around a giant game board, completely absorbed in the rules and the competition.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. We can't just choose to walk away.
You know, that's a great analogy because have you ever felt that way? Like
Yeah.
you're on this predetermined path
Oh, yeah, totally.
and it's hard to deviate.
Yeah, like it almost feels like you're stuck.
Exactly.
Okay, so in the session, the hypnotist compares us to players at a game table.
Makes sense.
So we're so engrossed in the experience that we don't even consider the possibility of just leaving the table.
And that's where things get really interesting, right?
Totally. Like, what if we do become aware of the game?
Yeah.
What happens then?
Well, that's the thing. The session suggests that even if we get a glimpse of the truth, if we become aware of the game, we might actually be drawn in even deeper.
Oh, wow. So it's like you catch a glimpse behind the curtain, but instead of being liberated,
Yeah,
you're just pulled further into the illusion.
exactly. And the session highlights this danger that we become fixated on winning or losing
Right.
or mastering the rules of the game.
Uh-huh.
And we completely lose sight of the bigger picture.
So, like, what if there's a different reality beyond this game?
Right, and we're missing out on it because we're so focused on playing by the rules.
Oh, man, that makes you wonder who or what even created this game in the first place.
Right, and what's the point?
Yeah, like, is there even a point?
Well, the session calls the force or intelligence behind the simulation the programmer.
Oh.
But it doesn't give us any concrete answers about the programmer's nature.
So we're left to speculate.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's where things get really interesting, you know?
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. What are some of the implications of different programmer motivations?
Well, imagine, for example, a programmer who is driven by entertainment.
Okay, yeah.
Then our reality might be full of drama, conflict, and challenges, just like a good video game.
Right.
But what if the programmer is more focused on learning and growth? Then our reality might be designed to encourage cooperation,
Uh-huh.
problem solving, and developing certain skills.
What's basically depending on the programmer's goals.
Yeah,
Our reality could be a thrilling adventure,
yeah.
a challenging puzzle, or even a cosmic classroom.
Exactly. It makes you question what level we might be on in this game, you know?
Totally. Like, are we just starting out, or are we close to fighting the final boss?
And here's another layer of complexity. The session says that the programmer,
Or the system itself?
yeah, seems to be self-correcting.
What does that even mean?
So it adapts to how aware the players are becoming.
Okay.
So as we become more conscious,
Yeah.
the game might adjust its difficulty level or introduce new challenges to keep us engaged.
Oh, wow, that's
Wow.
wild. Like, the game knows we're catching on.
Right.
So it throws in a curveball to keep us on our toes.
Exactly.
But that brings up the question, is this self-correction for our benefit?
That's the big question, yeah.
Or is it a way to keep us from seeing the bigger picture?
I mean, is the programmer nudging us towards greater understanding? Or is it simply trying to maintain the illusion
Right.
to keep us playing the game?
Yeah, and the session uses an analogy with artists to illustrate this.
Oh, really? How so?
While some artists express themselves authentically, while others become tools for spreading predetermined messages.
Oh, I see. So the question is,
What kind of artist is this programmer?
that's a great way to put it. And what does all of this mean for our listeners?
That's a great question. It's like, are we creating our own realities, or are we just pawns in someone else's grand design?
It's a powerful question to ask.
And a bit of a mind-bending one, too.
Definitely. But this is where the session encourages us to examine our own lives.
Okay, so what do we need to think about?
Ask yourself, are you pursuing your own genuine passions and interests?
Okay.
Or are you following a path that feels predetermined by societal expectations or external pressures?
I see what you mean. So, like, are you the artist or the tool?
Precisely.
Okay, well, that's a lot to unpack already, but there's one more thing I'm really curious about.
What's that?
Does this game ever end?
Ah, yes, the end game. The session actually talks about several different possibilities.
Okay, leave him honest.
Okay, so first you have a complete reset.
So, like, starting the game over, would we even know if it happened?
Exactly. Then there's the idea of a total shutdown.
Okay, so what happens when the game is over?
Well, do we cease to exist? Or is there something beyond this virtual reality that we transition to?
Right.
And lastly, the session talks about individual players waking up and escaping the game.
Hold on, escaping the game, is that even possible?
Well, that's the big question.
Hmm?
And the session suggests that a mass awakening is unlikely
Why not?
because most people are so deeply invested in the game
Yeah, that makes sense.
and they're afraid of what might lie beyond it. They're comfortable with the familiar, even if it's an illusion.
Right.
But for those who do want to find a way out there might be paths to liberation.
Like Neo choosing the red pill in the Matrix.
Exactly. But then here's another twist, even if you do escape. What's to say you won't just end up in another, maybe even more sophisticated simulation?
Whoa, we're really getting into sci-fi territory now. But I think we need to pause for a second and address the big question.
What's I?
Is there any real evidence to support these ideas of simulations and programmers?
That's fair to be clear. The session isn't presenting these ideas as hard facts,
Okay.
more like possibilities, thought experiments, to make us question our assumptions about reality.
Right.
But some physicists and philosophers have argued that the simulation hypothesis isn't as far-fetched as it might seem.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, think about the incredible speed of technological advancement we've seen in recent decades.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
So it raises the question of whether, at some point, we'll be able to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality.
I can see that. So if we're on the verge of creating such realistic simulations, isn't it plausible that a more advanced civilization could have already done it?
Exactly, and that we might be living in one of their creations.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. Are there any other arguments in favor of the simulation idea?
Yeah, some proponents of the simulation hypothesis also point to the strange things we see in quantum mechanics.
Like what?
Well, in quantum mechanics, particles seem to exist in multiple states at the same time until they're observed.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
So this could suggest that our reality is only rendered when we're looking at it, kind of like a video game only processing graphics in the player's field of view.
So our reality could be like a giant on-demand rendering program.
Yeah, it's the idea.
That's pretty wild. So do you believe we're living in a simulation?
Honestly, I don't have a definitive answer.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
But I find the possibility intriguing, and I think it's worth exploring. Even if it's just a thought experiment, it forces us to think critically about what reality really is.
Totally. It's like a mental workout.
Yeah.
Pushing us to expand our understanding of what's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating, right?
Absolutely. But before we go any further down this rabbit hole, let's address the practical side of all this.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's say, for argument's sake, that we are living in a simulation. How does that change how we live our lives?
Right. What should our listeners take away from all of this?
Yeah, like how do we actually apply any of this to our daily lives?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The session actually gives us some practical advice for navigating this potential simulation,
Okay, I'm all ears.
for becoming more conscious players in the game.
So how do we level up in this game of life?
That's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait. This is getting good.
So before the break, we were talking about how this awakening, where more and more people are questioning reality,
Right.
it could just be another level of the game itself.
Yeah, it's like, what if our search for truth is actually leading us deeper into the illusion? It's kind of trippy to think about.
Definitely. And there's another mind-bending concept from this session that I want to get into.
Okay, what is it?
The idea that our reality might be like a collective dream.
Wait, a collective dream. So you're saying we're all creating this shared reality with our thoughts and beliefs and energy.
Exactly. Like we're all dreaming together, but we've forgotten that we're dreaming.
Oh, okay. And it gets even weirder. Well, the session says that we might be participating in multiple dreams simultaneously, like existing on different levels of reality.
Oh, wow. Multiple dream levels. Okay, I need a minute to process that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So if we're all contributing to this collective dream, does that mean we're influencing each other's experiences?
That's a powerful question.
Right. Like what I do affects you and what you do affects me.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
Like we're not just isolated individuals, but part of a vast web of consciousness. Our thoughts and words and actions create ripples that impact the collective dream.
That's incredible. So it's like we're all holding pieces of the same puzzle,
Yeah.
and how we choose to fit those pieces together determines the overall picture.
I like that analogy, and the session encourages us to become conscious creators.
Conscious creators. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? If reality is a collective dream, how can we influence it?
Well, the session talks about a number of techniques that can help us become more aware within the dream, some ancient, some more modern.
So it's like learning to lucid dream.
Exactly. Becoming conscious in the dream state so you can start to exert some control over the narrative.
So instead of being swept along by the current of the dream, we can start to steer the boat.
Exactly, and these techniques can help us tap into our inherent creative power
Okay.
and begin to shape the dream according to our own values and intentions.
And some of these techniques are,
Things like meditation, mindfulness, and exploring altered states of consciousness.
okay, so I'm starting to see how this ties back to the idea of the programmer.
How so?
If we're all co-creating this reality, then in a sense, we're all part of the programming team.
Exactly. And that's what's so empowering about this idea. It's not about blindly following some external authority or a set of rules,
Right.
but about discovering your own inner guidance system, that voice within that knows what's best for you.
So it's less about trying to figure out the programmer's intentions
Yeah.
and more about becoming conscious programmers ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the illusions and manipulations and limitations of the game,
Uh-huh.
but also appreciating the beauty and joy and opportunities for growth that it offers.
So it's like we're all playing this super complex video game,
Yeah.
but we've been so focused on the basic controls that we haven't explored the advanced settings.
I like that analogy. Once you start tweaking those settings,
Yeah.
adjusting the parameters of your reality, that's when things get really exciting. It's about finding that balance between awareness and engagement, where we can play the game fully without losing ourselves.
So becoming a master player.
Exactly. Someone who understands the rules of the game,
Mhm.
sees through the tricks and tactics, but still enjoys the challenge and the artistry of it all.
I love that. But how do we actually become these master players? What are the steps?
Well, the session gets into some pretty practical advice for navigating this complex game we call life.
Okay, cool.
And it starts with something we often overlook in our quest for happiness and fulfillment: self-discovery.
Self-discovery. What does that even look like in the context of a simulation?
It's about shifting your focus inward, away from external validation, and towards understanding your true self.
Okay.
In a world that's constantly telling us who we should be and what we should want, it's easy to lose sight of our authentic selves.
So it's not about chasing likes on social media or striving for those external markers of success.
Exactly. It's about tuning into your unique passions, values, and gifts.
So like what truly makes you come alive?
Yes. What activities make you lose track of time? What are you naturally good at?
That's great advice. But it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, it definitely takes effort.
Like in a world that's so noisy and distracting, how do we even begin to quiet our minds and hear that inner voice?
That's where practices like meditation, mindfulness come in.
Right.
They help us create space between ourselves and our thoughts,
Yeah.
so we can observe our internal chatter without getting swept away by it.
So it's like taking a break from the game to check in with yourself, to
Yeah.
recalibrate your internal compass.
Exactly. And once we've tuned into that inner guidance system, the session says that we need to get real about our desires.
Okay, desires, they're such a powerful force in our lives.
They really are. And the session acknowledges that desires can either keep us tethered to the game or help us navigate it more skillfully.
So it's not about denying our desires altogether.
No, not at all. It's about understanding their nature, their origins. Are your desires driven by external pressures,
Okay.
by a need to fit in or keep up with the Joneses? Or are they coming from a deeper place, from your authentic self?
That's a great question. How do we even know if a desire is coming from our true selves or if it's just a product of our conditioning of the programming we've been exposed to?
It takes a certain level of self-awareness and honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Take some time to reflect on your desires. Where do they come from? What need are they trying to fulfill? Do they align with your values and your vision for your life?
Okay, so it's like taking inventory of your internal software.
Yeah,
Identifying any bugs or outdated programs that might be holding you back.
I like that analogy. And once you've done that, the session emphasizes the importance of making choices that align with your values.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Right. How so?
Well, the session suggests that Our choices have real consequences.
even if we're living in a simulation.
Yeah, even if reality is a dream, our actions still matter.
So it's not just about winning or losing, but how we play the game.
Exactly. Are we playing with integrity, with compassion, with a sense of responsibility for our actions?
Those are the qualities that really define who we are, beyond the roles and identities we might assume within the game.
So even if the external world is an illusion, the internal world,
Yeah.
our values, our choices, those are real and they have a ripple effect on the collective dream.
Exactly. Our actions matter. Even if we're not sure what the ultimate goal of the game is, we can still choose to live with purpose,
Yeah.
to create a reality that reflects our highest values.
And that brings us to the big question. If we are living in a dream, a collective creation, what kind of dream do you want to create?
I love that question. It's not just about figuring out the nature of reality, but taking responsibility for our role in shaping it.
It's both empowering and a little daunting.
Definitely. But before we get lost in the philosophical weeds, let's come back to the practical advice. What are some tangible steps our listeners can take to start becoming more conscious creators of their reality?
So we've covered some really mind-blowing stuff in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
This whole idea of living in a simulation and reality as a collective dream and all that.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
But now let's talk about what our listeners can actually do.
Right, the practical stuff.
Exactly. What are some concrete steps they can take to become more conscious players in this game of life?
Well, this session actually gives us some surprisingly practical advice.
Okay, I'm all ears.
And one of the key takeaways is minimizing those material cravings.
Minimizing material cravings. I mean, I think we can all relate to that,
It's a big one.
especially in a world that's constantly telling us to buy more stuff.
Right, exactly. It's like everywhere you look, there's an ad telling you you need this or that to be happy.
Totally. But how does minimizing material cravings tie into the idea of living in a simulation?
Well, this session suggests that those desires for material possessions can actually keep us tethered to the game.
Okay, I see what you mean. So the more we focus on getting things, the more we get caught up in the rules and limitations of this reality.
Exactly. It's like being weighed down with heavy equipment in a video game.
Oh yeah, that makes it way harder to move around and explore.
Exactly. So by minimizing our attachment to material things, we become lighter, more agile players in the game.
Okay, so less stuff, more freedom. I like it. But what about desires that come from a deeper place?
Like what?
Like a desire for creative expression or a yearning for connection with something bigger than ourselves?
Ah, those are the desires worth exploring.
Okay.
The section really encourages us to pay attention to those whispers of our soul, those longings that tug at our hearts.
So it's like following our bliss.
Yeah, exactly. But how do we know which path to take? I mean, there are so many options, so many distractions.
That's a good point.
Well, that's where discernment comes in.
Okay.
The session doesn't say we should blindly follow any specific ideology or belief system.
So no gurus or self-help books telling us exactly what to do.
Nope. It's
Ugh.
about becoming your own guide, trusting your intuition, and making choices that resonate with your deepest values.
It's like creating your own map instead of using someone else's.
Exactly. And remember, even though we're talking about life as a game,
Yeah.
the session emphasizes that our choices have real consequences.
Right. It's not all fun and games. Even in a simulation, our actions still matter.
You really do.
Yeah.
It's about playing the game with integrity, with compassion, and with a sense of purpose.
I like that. And speaking of purpose, what if we're not sure what our purpose is?
Well, you might not always know exactly what you're supposed to be doing or where you're going.
That's true.
And in those times when you feel lost or uncertain about your direction,
Mm.
the session suggests that we focus on the journey rather than the destination.
So it's about enjoying the process of discovery
Exactly. It's about finding joy in exploring your potential.
instead of getting fixated on reaching some predetermined goal.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that we're not alone in this journey.
Right. We're all connected, all part of this collective dream.
Exactly. And by supporting each other, sharing our experiences and learning from each other,
Yeah.
we can create a more beautiful and fulfilling reality for everyone.
That's a really hopeful message, even if we are living in a simulation or a dream.
Yeah, and the session reminds us that the most important thing is not to get so caught up in the game that we forget to enjoy it.
Right. Like find those moments of joy and gratitude and connection amidst all the chaos.
Exactly. Find that sweet spot between awareness and engagement where you can play the game fully without losing yourself.
That's beautiful. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've explored some truly mind-bending ideas today.
Yeah, we have.
And I hope you, the listener, have gained some valuable insights.
And maybe even some inspiration.
Yes. And remember, whether you believe we're living in a simulation, or a collective dream, or just the reality we've always known,
Yeah,
the most important thing is to live consciously,
absolutely.
to make choices that align with your values, and
Yes.
to find joy in the process of discovering your own unique path.
Well said. And if you ever find yourself questioning the nature of reality,
Yeah.
remember that the most profound answers are often found within